This is Spare Time Repair, and this is a Nakamichi CD Player 4 from 1990. This brand is arguably best known for its reference cassette decks, but they also made plenty of decent CD players. This one was sent to me by a viewer called Rob, who explained that it wasn't reading discs, and sure enough, nothing much happens when you try to load one. Rob purchased a new pickup for it, but didn't get as far as installing it. Coincidentally, the very next day I had an email from a viewer called Chris, who asked if I'd like to have one of his custom-made Nakamichi test jigs. Calibrating certain Nakamichi units requires one of these jigs to be plugged into a port on the PCB, so he created this replica since the original ones are like gold dust. Naturally, I accepted Chris's offer with gratitude, knowing that it would be ideal for Rob's player. But we can only calibrate it once it's playing CDs again, so that's mission number 1. Isn't it nice when a CD player has such a practical model name? This one has the distinctive Nakamichi stylings. It also has a switchable coaxial digital output, but beneath its fancy looks and aluminium fascia, I believe it's hiding a bit of a secret. And the secret is that it's using a bog-standard 90s Sony transport. I must say I found that slightly underwhelming given Nakamichi's reputation, but I guess this was one of their more budget-friendly models. So let's power it up and see what happens when I load a disc. Because it didn't sound like the disc was even spinning up. Well, believe it or not, it's just read the disc. It's nice when you can fix things just by looking at them. Well, I'm assuming that's not a repeatable action. Then again, well, that's interesting. I tried it several times when I first received it, and it didn't even sound like it was spinning up. Wonder if the disc motor just got slightly stiff. Seems to be playing quite happily now. Well, it's good news in terms of our calibration, but I'm still not convinced it's reliable, so I think it's worth servicing the transport first. Transport has been raised on a little platform because it's quite a tall player, but the tray front will need to come off. That's metal as well, so there are some nods to decent quality. So I'll just release all these connectors. And out it comes. And I believe this is the testing port that I'll need to connect the jig to later. I think it says TP101 under there. And this is the DAC hiding under here. It's an AD1864N with like a play logo. I'd never seen a DAC like this before, but it was made by a company called Analog Devices and is an 8x oversampling 18-bit DAC. Just going to take the clamp off. And to remove the tray, I just need to wind this gear at the bottom. That drops the pickup. And I can just remove these 2 screws at the end. Pinch my finger in the process. Got a nice metal cover protecting the belt, which doesn't look too bad. I think I'll change it anyway. Bit of preventative maintenance. Perfect. Everything seems well lubricated. The lens looks clean. I can only imagine that maybe the disc motor had a dead spot. Not seeing a lot wrong here. This is all super smooth. The only thing providing resistance is this cable, sort of acting like a bit of a spring. Obviously not enough to overcome this motor. And I know Rob bought the replacement pickup, and this one's going to have a lot of hours on it, but this one's an original Sony, and even given its age, it will probably outlast the cheap replacement. So I'm inclined to leave it alone. I do think it's slightly ironic that the most readily available optical pickup you can buy today is a replacement for one of the most reliable. I haven't seen many of these go bad. This original pickup is far superior to this knockoff. Even if it did need changing, I'd use one of my own ones rather than this. My replacements have at least got the brass bushings where the sled rail goes. And since I'm suspicious of this motor, I'm going to apply some oil. There's a hole in the back bearing as well. And I've just attached a couple of leads to the motor, because I'm just going to run some voltage through it for a few minutes. Doesn't sound the quietest, so maybe that was the issue. Going to roll the other motors too. And lenses are often not as clean as they look. There's quite a bit of dust on that. In fact, since this is an original KSS 150, we can remove the shroud. That gives us access to the collimator lens underneath. And that's another way in which the replacement pickup falls short. There's no collimator lens under there. Just make sure everything's in tip-top optical condition. I think that motor's had long enough. Just tidy these pads up a bit because it will annoy me otherwise. Final thing is to check the limit switches. Well, that's not good. I wonder if that might have been the issue. Player wouldn't read the disc because it didn't think the sled was home. So I need to desolder this one to clean it. And annoyingly, this one's got an enormous cover on it, which means there's no headroom to pull it out, which means I'm going to have to remove this board. So much for touching up these solder joints. I honestly don't know how I ever managed without my desoldering gun. So the pointy side of the switch goes towards the circle. I can just remove this cover. Whoa, I have no idea what that is, but it's definitely not helping. That could well have been the fault. I'm going to run some very fine sandpaper through it. This is 4000 grit, I think. Always check your limit switches. Well, it's closing by itself now. Maybe I put that shroud on the wrong way round. That's annoying. Well, I haven't removed it, but now it's working. Well, I don't know why it didn't work before. Yeah, it's working fine now. It's a mystery. I'm not going to re-grease the rails because they're perfectly smooth. Put the metal shield back on. And then take it off again because I didn't get it in the right slot. It's actually quite tricky. It's got to go in 3 slots at once and then slide over. That's better. And then pop this nylon gear back on. And again, the grease feels okay, so I'm not going to intervene. Tray needs a clean, but I think a wet wipe will suffice. Refit our tray stoppers. And the disc clamp. I'll be very surprised if this is not now working reliably. This was actually fed behind this screw before. Like that. Probably just to keep it out of the way. So I'm quite sure this is going to be just fine. It does take a moment to start spinning up, but I think that's normal. No table of contents permanence. Searches pretty quickly. So although I'm excited to move on to the calibration, I am going to give this front panel a clean first, because it has been gathering dust. These ribbon cables are hardwired into the PCB. Come on, Nakamichi. But I think I can still remove the panel and just unclip the front panel PCB. Well, that couldn't be easier. Just the 2 screws. I don't think I can remove the buttons. Will they unclip? So this is an aluminium faceplate over the plastic shell. It's got that nice yellow filter. I do like the look of the display on this. Anyway, I'm going to get this cleaned up and then we can get on with the calibration. Right, this is now as clean as it can be. There are a few scuffs and nicks, but nothing to worry about. And I was able to push out these buttons in the end and clean those properly. so we're ready to move on. And to be honest, if this were any other CD player, I'd probably leave it there. It's playing, it's tracking well, it sounds fine. Is there any real benefit to further calibration? Well, I guess we're about to find out. I have never used a test jig to calibrate a CD player before, so I'm coming at this as a layperson. Chris didn't give me any specific instructions on how to use this. He just said follow the guide in the service manual. So we'll find out how easy it is. What I'm going to do is look at the eye pattern before and after and see if it has made any difference. Because I don't think I'm going to be able to hear any difference, and I think the eye pattern is the only way to measure it. Well, it looks like the eye pattern can only be measured when the test jig is in place. Here is the RF test point, so we do need to plug this in straight away. Chris included two cables. This one covers the CD Player 4 and the CD 4, which are different models. And this is for various other models where the test point is split in two. So this end of the cable plugs into our test port, and it's labelled pin 13 and pin 3 is pin 13. So obviously the first two pins aren't required. I have to say that hasn't slid all the way to the bottom, but I assume it's making good contact. Don't want to force it. And this end plugs into the test unit. So we've got TE2 and -5 volts, which means it needs to go in this way. Obviously I don't want to short anything out, so I'm just going to lay this silicone mat down. You can see the original test unit would have come in a plastic case. So for the eye pattern, I'm going to connect my probe to ground and the RF pin. And yes, I was supposed to use this ground pin. I don't know why I didn't, but it doesn't really matter. Then turn on the unit and the world's noisiest oscilloscope. Let's see what happens when we play the disc. My scale is obviously a bit off. I mean, that is 0.2 volts per division, so that amplitude is about 1 volt peak to peak. And again, I have to say I would be very happy with that as an eye pattern, but let's see if we can improve on it. I printed out the adjustment instructions from the service manual, so we'll go through those in order. And the preliminary step, connect the test unit, and it's saying to put the pots in their mechanical center, but that's only if you replace the PCB or the pot itself. So we'll skip that step. Laser current check. So for this one we need to measure the voltage between IOP and the +5 volt terminals of the test unit. Doesn't say which leads should go where, but I'm going to assume the red goes on +5 volts. And I'll put my black lead on IOP. So we calculate the current using the formula given, voltmeter value divided by 22 ohms, and then we have to read the measurement on the laser pickup itself. And the value should be within 10%. So I'm going to play back the disc. .225. So 1.225 divided by 22, 0.055. Well, the last three digits on the label are 535, and that's what it said we should be referring to. So I don't really understand that. Am I supposed to ignore the first two zeros? Am I supposed to be taking 556? No idea. So that's not a great start. Okay, next is the VCO frequency adjustment. For this we need a frequency counter between pins PLCK and ground on the main PCB. Set SW1 of the test unit to VCO. This is TP102, and I'm going to use my digital oscilloscope for this. Okay, I've got my 10:1 probe on the test points. Here's what I'm getting on the scope. And the frequency is at the bottom there. We're looking for 4.318 megahertz, and it's dancing around a bit, but it is occasionally showing that figure. So I'm not inclined to make any adjustment there. In fact, if I use my other multimeter instead of the scope, we're pretty much bang on. So that's good. And now we turn this switch to the off position. Next is the EFM signal adjustment, which is the eye pattern we saw earlier. Oscilloscope to RF connector of test unit, and we're adjusting VR102 until waveform amplitude becomes maximum and the waveform becomes clear, not thick, as shown below. Well, this is VR102. It's labeled F bias, and I'm going to mark it before I start. So I'm playing back the disc with exactly the same oscilloscope settings as before, same disc as well, and I'm going to tweak this pot, looking for maximum amplitude and clarity. I think it's there. And again, to be perfectly honest, it's not far from where it was. Next is the EF balance adjustment, and we need to connect the oscilloscope to TE connector of test unit. That one is down the bottom here. Again, we've got a ground pin next to it. It says we need to turn switch 2 to the EF position. Oh, the disc is going crazy. Adjust VR101 so the center level of the waveform is within the range of 0 volts to 0.1 volts DC as shown below. VR101 is down here, but again I would say that's correct. The waveform does look exactly like it does in the picture, so I'm not going to touch that pot either. This next one is a little trickier. It's the tracking gain adjustment, and it's tricky because I need an oscillator. And I don't have one of those, but I do have this frequency generator app on my phone, and I need to connect that to this oscillator pin and also connect channels 1 and 2 of my oscilloscope to the X and Y pins, and I've already done that. So how do I connect my phone to the oscillator pin? I'm going to use this Bluetooth adapter, and I only need one channel, so I'm using this as a little breakout. So my ground wire goes there. I carefully connect the white clip to the center pin. Then I can connect these to the appropriate pins on the test unit. It says to set the filter switch of the test unit to the in position and set switch 3 to the tracking position. So with my phone synced to the Bluetooth adapter, I'm going to play the tone. Okay, this was slightly confusing at first, but I think I've got it now. The yellow channel is coming from the frequency generator on the phone, and the blue channel is coming from the disc. If I press stop, we lose the blue channel. So I press play again, and it says to adjust VR104 so the amplitude of both waveforms on the oscilloscope are equal. Well, the best way to do that is to overlap them. And I would say the yellow is larger than the blue at the moment. And I would say they're now equal. Now I need to set switch 3 to the off position. And it looks like the focus gain adjustment is basically the same, only this time it needs to be 800 Hz. We move this switch to the focus position, filter switch to the in position, which it was in already, and we adjust VR103 so that the amplitude of both waveforms are equal. And this time the blue channel is significantly smaller. It kind of looks like this picture, which is not good. So let's tweak VR103. There, I would say they're now equal. Number 8 is the distortion adjustment. And for that we need a distortion meter, which I don't have. It also requires a very specific test disc. I think that one I'm going to have to ignore. And the final step is an operation check. Play back the following test programs, make sure there is no noise or track jumping. And that is that. So it's said to do the EFM signal adjustment again. And is it me, or does it look slightly cleaner? So I just tweaked that pot again, but that looks like the best I can get it. And although I didn't make any big adjustments, I do think the post-calibration pattern looks slightly sharper. But overall I think this player was in pretty good shape to begin with. Well, I hope that was of some interest. And you can see that those adjustments just wouldn't have been possible without this. And no, it wasn't far out to begin with, but I think the focus gain adjustment was the most significant. I probably turned that pot about 30 degrees to get those waveforms the same amplitude. But I can now send this back to Rob, confident that it's in tip-top condition. Not all CD players require a test jig for calibration, but when they do, you're basically up the creek because they were only made available to a select group of technicians, and few survive today. So the effort that Chris has gone to design and build this replica is hugely impressive, and I really appreciate him gifting this one to me. He normally sells them for around $95, and I'm sure there's not much of a profit margin in that, so all credit to him for even getting it off the ground. I did email him afterwards with some feedback, and as of recording this, I'm awaiting his reply. But if you're interested in getting your hands on one, you can always email me and I'll pass the inquiry on. I'll also put a list of the Nakamichi players that it's compatible with in the description. As for the player itself, I've been listening to it for a day or so now and there have been no further disk reading issues, so whatever the problem was seems to have been resolved by servicing the transport. I'll return Rob's spare pickup when I mail the player, though hopefully he won't be needing it anytime soon. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.